It. Captain Rila's eyes swept over the area, sharp and judgmental. Her species, tall and elegant, moved with a natural grace that came from centuries of evolution. Everything about them seemed perfected, from their powerful limbs to their glowing, intelligent eyes. And then, there was him. Kale, a human. Small, fragile, and awkward in comparison. His limbs looked too thin to lift the equipment he carried. His clothes hung loosely on his frame, clearly designed for a planet with less gravity and less danger. Even his eyes, dark and wide, seemed almost too soft for a place like this, where danger could strike at any moment. Rila couldn't stop herself from smirking. "They're so primitive," she whispered under her breath, though her voice carried enough for her nearby officers to hear. Some of them chuckled quietly, trying to hide it behind mechanical adjustments and the hum of energy shields. Kale stood still for a moment, scanning the towering structures around him, trying not to let fear show. He had trained for this Earth, was small, weak-looking, but humans had something no other species could boast: adaptability. When the odds were impossible, humans found a way. That had been true on Earth for millennia, and it would be true here, in the Council of the Stars. Rila approached him, her long stride leaving the platform echoing under the metallic floor. Her arms crossed over her chest as she looked down at him, a mixture of amusement and disdain in her gaze. "Do you even understand the technology you're holding?" she asked, nodding toward the small handheld device Kale carried. Her voice carried authority, as if she expected him to fail before he even tried. Kale met her gaze steadily. There was no fear in his eyes, only calm determination. He had seen the mockery of stronger species before. He had faced it on Earth and survived it. Rila would not break him. Not now, not ever. The human's fingers tightened around the device. It was delicate, a fragile piece of engineering that, in the wrong hands, could cause disaster. But Kale knew its mechanisms like the back of his hand. He had learned patience, precision, and creativity skills humans developed because their world demanded them. While larger species relied on sheer power, humans relied on ingenuity. Rila tilted her head, clearly unimpressed. "You won't last a day among the council," she said, her tone sharp and cutting. The wind from the twin suns stirred, rustling Kale's jacket and making him shiver slightly. He swallowed his nerves and stood taller, as much as his small frame allowed. "I may be small," Kale said softly, but the strength in his voice surprised her. "But I've survived worse. I've learned to adapt when everything falls apart. I've learned to think, to act, and to endure." Rila's smirk faltered, just for a moment. No human had ever spoken to her that way before, not with such quiet confidence, not with such unwavering calm. She raised an eyebrow, curious despite herself, but quickly replaced it with her usual condescension. "We'll see," she said. "We'll see if your kind can survive here." Around them, other species watched, some whispering, some shaking their heads, most expecting him to fail. Kale ignored them all. He focused on the landing platform, on the energy barriers, on the vast sky and the endless stars beyond. To any other species, the galaxy was a threat. To him, it was an opportunity, a challenge humans were born to meet. Sudden hum echoed through the platform as the Council's transport systems activated. Aliens of every size and shape moved with efficient precision, their motions confident, trained, and fast. Kale's small figure looked even smaller among them. But in his mind, every step he had taken on Earth, every hardship, every storm, every moment of doubt, had led him here. And he was ready. Rila turned to her lieutenant, her expression unreadable. "Watch him," she said quietly. "See how long it takes before he proves he's not worth our time." But even as the words left her lips, Kale adjusted the device in his hands, his calm focus unshakable. There was a spark in his eyes, a quiet fire that no mockery, no ridicule, no towering alien could extinguish. The platform was quiet for a moment, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. And then Kale took a single step forward, small but deliberate, toward the unknown challenges waiting for him. This was more than a rival. This was the moment humans would show that size, strength, and appearances could be deceiving, and that even a species underestimated by the galaxy could leave its mark on the stars. The council chamber was enormous, filled with beings from dozens of worlds, each more unusual and imposing than the last. Their eyes, claws, wings, or scales gleamed under the bright overhead lights. But all attention seemed to fall on Kale, the tiny human who had arrived alone, carrying nothing but determination and a small device. Rila leaned against a polished railing. Her posture relaxed, a smirk still lingering on her lips. Around her, other alien delegates whispered and chuckled, openly mocking Kale's stature. "He looks like a child," one hissed. "How can this human possibly contribute anything to the council?" Cale felt their stares, heavy and full of expectation that he would fail. But instead of fear, he felt something else, a quiet determination, the kind that had carried his species through millennia of hardship. Humans had endured worse than ridicule. On Earth, they had survived plagues, wars, natural disasters, and famine. They had learned to adapt when everything seemed lost. And now, among these towering and elegant aliens, Cale would show them that strength wasn't always measured in size or shape. Rila's voice cut sharply through the murmurs. "Step forward, human," she commanded. "Show us what you can do. Or should we save the council the trouble and remove you now?" Her tone was sharp, almost cruel, but there was a hint of curiosity in her eyes that she didn't want to admit. Cale stepped forward, small feet echoing on the metal floor. The chamber fell silent for a moment, the whispers fading into a tense hush. The device in his hands, fragile and intricate, seemed almost ridiculous in his fingers. But Cale didn't falter. He took a deep breath and connected the device to the council's central control panel, his fingers moving with surprising speed and precision. "Do you even know what you're doing?" Rila's voice was now tinged with disbelief. Her pride demanded that he fail, that he crumble under the weight of expectation. Cale's gaze remained steady. "I do," he said simply. His voice was calm but firm. "I may not look powerful, but I've survived what most species can't even imagine. I know how to work with what I have, and that's enough." The council's sensors flickered as the device activated. Alarms had been predicted, but Cale had anticipated them, adjusting settings in real time. Beams of energy that had been unstable moments ago now hummed steadily, stabilized by his quick hands. The chamber gasped. Some aliens leaned closer, incredulous, unable to believe that such a tiny being could manipulate systems that had baffled the most brilliant of their engineers. Rila's smirk faltered, replaced by a tight line. She crossed her arms, trying to hide the growing respect she couldn't yet acknowledge. "Beginner's luck," she muttered, though her voice lacked conviction. Minutes passed. The council watched in awe as Cale moved from panel to panel, fixing systems, predicting failures, and adjusting calibrations faster than anyone thought possible. The whispers of mockery had turned into murmurs of disbelief. This human, small and fragile, was accomplishing what their most experienced engineers had called impossible. A younger delegate, a species covered in chitin and glowing markings, leaned toward Rila and whispered, "Captain, he's not failing, he's better than any of us expected." Rila's eyes narrowed, a storm of emotions brewing within her. Anger, disbelief, frustration, and deep down, a grudging respect she refused to admit. She had come here expecting to see a pathetic human struggle, and instead, she was witnessing something extraordinary. Cale paused for a moment, wiping sweat from his brow. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of those who had mocked him only moments ago. "Strength is not measured by size," he said, voice carrying across the room. "It is measured by will, by determination, by the courage to act even when everyone doubts you. My species has learned to survive because we never give up." The room was silent. Every eye, every antenna, every glowing marking turned toward him, fully attentive. Even Rila felt the weight of his words, their truth impossible to ignore. She had believed humans were weak, insignificant, but here they were, proving her assumptions wrong. Showing a resilience that few species possessed, Cale returned the device to his chest. Standing tall, as much as his small frame allowed. The council had expected failure, but they were now faced with undeniable capability. The very ridicule that had once surrounded him had faded, replaced with curiosity, admiration, and a sense of respect the humans had earned in silence. Rila looked down at him, her voice quieter this time, almost reluctant. "Perhaps there is more to your species than I thought." Cale's lips curved into a faint, weary smile. "There's always more than you see," he said simply. "You just have to be willing to look beyond appearances." The landing platform stretched wide under the pale light of the twin suns. Gleaming metal and shimmering energy barriers surrounding for the first time. The council saw the human not as a fragile being to laugh at, but as a symbol of endurance, adaptability, and quiet strength. And for Rila, a seed of doubt planted itself, a challenge to her long-held beliefs about the galaxy's hierarchy of power. Days passed since Cale's remarkable demonstration in the council chamber. But the air between him and Captain Rila remained tense. She watched him carefully, her eyes sharp, always searching for a flaw, a weakness, anything that could prove her earlier assumptions right. Cale, however, moved with quiet confidence. Unfazed by her scrutiny, the council had scheduled a series of trials tasks, designed to test every species' ability to survive and manage complex situations under pressure. Rila smiled grimly. These trials were meant to show the superiority of stronger, faster, more advanced species. She expected Kale to struggle, to stumble, to confirm what she had believed all along. "You don't understand what you're facing," Rila said one morning as they prepared for the first trial. Her tone was cold, laced with derision. "The environments, the systems, they will crush you. Humans aren't meant for this. You'll fail." Kale looked at her calmly, his small hands adjusting the straps of his equipment. "Perhaps," he said softly. "But if I do fail, at least I will have tried. That is something humans have always done. And sometimes, trying is the first step to surviving what no one else can." Rila raised an eyebrow, exasperated. She had expected arrogance from a human, but instead she found humility wrapped in quiet determination, a combination that irritated and fascinated her at the same time. The first trial began. A simulated disaster scenario on a deserted space station. Energy systems were failing, structural panels were breaking apart, and life support systems were unstable. Most species panicked under the pressure, their superior strength useless against the cascading failures and unpredictable malfunctions. Kale stepped forward. He didn't rush. He didn't panic. He analyzed. Small hands worked with intricate controls, rerouting power, patching energy flows, and stabilizing the failing systems. Every alien around him watched in disbelief as he navigated spaces too narrow for the larger species, finding solutions that required not brute force, but intelligence, patience, and creativity. Rila's jaw tightened. She had never seen such a combination of precision and calm in someone so small. "Luck won't save you this time," she muttered, though her voice betrayed a note of doubt. Minutes turned into hours. Alarms blared, sparks flew, and machinery groaned as if protesting the strain. Kale's movements were deliberate, almost rhythmic, as if he could hear the pulse of the station itself. He paused only to give brief, clear instructions to the other species, teaching them how to help without panicking. Slowly, the chaos began to subside. By the time the trial ended, the station systems were stabilized. The council had anticipated total failure, or at best, a partial success, but Kale had done more than survive. He had restored the station completely, with minimal damage. The room, once filled with mocking laughter, now echoed with stunned silence. Rila's eyes burned with a mixture of frustration and respect. She approached him, voice tight with unspoken feelings. You are still standing. You've done what no other species has managed in this trial." Kale met her gaze evenly. "I told you," he said softly. "Strength isn't always measured by muscle or size. Sometimes it's measured by patience, by understanding, by never giving up when the world expects you to fail." Her hands clenched at her sides. She hated the truth in his words. It challenged everything she believed about the galaxy's natural order. Humans were supposed to be weak, insignificant, a species to be dismissed. And yet, here he stood, proving her assumptions wrong again and again. The other delegates whispered among themselves, exchanging glances of awe and disbelief. Kale's calm confidence and skill had shifted the room's perception. Even the most skeptical of species could no longer deny the human capacity to endure and innovate under pressure. Later, as the council dispersed, Rila found herself walking alongside Kale. "I need to know," she said quietly, almost reluctantly, "how you do it. How you survive in a universe that seems designed to crush you." Kale smiled faintly, a quiet warmth in his eyes. "Earth is not easy," he said. "We face storms, disasters, and dangers that would break most species. But we endure. We adapt. We learn. And when the odds are against us, we find ways to survive and even thrive. That is what my species has always done." Rila was silent. For the first time, she realized that the ridicule she had felt toward humans was born of ignorance. She had judged a species by appearances, without understanding the fires that had forged them. Kale glanced at her, sensing her inner struggle, but he said nothing. His calm presence, his quiet courage, and his unwavering belief in his species were enough to speak for him. That day marked a subtle but profound change. Rila had challenged Kale, but unknowingly, he had challenged her in return. The galaxy had taught her to measure strength in ways she had never considered before, and humans, small and underestimated, were quietly proving that they could stand taller than anyone imagined. The council chamber was unusually quiet the next morning. Even the most boisterous delegates seemed subdued, their usual chatter replaced by whispers of disbelief. Kale, the small human who had already defied expectations, was about to reveal something that would shake the very foundations of their understanding. Captain Rila stood at her post, arms crossed, her eyes fixed on him. She had spent nights replaying his actions, trying to find the flaw, the weakness, the mistake that would prove humans were not to be feared. But the more she thought, the more she realized she had been wrong. Small, fragile, underestimated. These were not weaknesses. They were the hallmarks of a species forged in adversity. Kale took a deep breath and began, his voice calm but carrying across the chamber like a steady current. "You believe humans are weak," he said. "You believe our homeworld is insignificant, and our species cannot survive the challenges of the galaxy. But you don't know our history. You don't know what Earth has endured." The chamber was silent. Every gaze turned to him, even Rila's. She felt a strange mixture of curiosity and apprehension. She had mocked him, ridiculed him, dismissed his species, but now she sensed that what he was about to say could change everything. "Earth was born from fire and violence," Kale continued, his eyes reflecting memories of his distant home. "The planet formed after a massive collision with another celestial body. Rocks burned. Oceans boiled. Life struggled to survive in conditions no other species could endure. And yet, life persisted. It adapted. It grew stronger. Every species that evolved there, especially humans, learned to survive in ways the universe never expected." Rila's smirk faltered. She had studied countless worlds, their origins, their ecosystems, but Earth had always seemed ordinary, even primitive. She had never imagined that a planet could be shaped by such relentless chaos, and that its inhabitants could emerge stronger because of it. Kale's voice grew firmer. "Humans have faced plagues that wiped out millions, wars that destroyed civilizations, ice ages that froze the land, and storms that tore everything apart. Every time we survived. Every time we adapted. Every disaster taught us something new. Every loss forced us to become cleverer, stronger, braver." The other delegates murmured among themselves, exchanging stunned looks. Even the most confident alien leaders had never faced a species whose resilience was born not from raw power, but from enduring constant adversity. Rila felt her heart tighten. She had always prided herself on her ability to judge strength, to see the weaknesses in others. And yet, she had never considered that strength could come from surviving impossible odds, from thriving when everything seemed against you. Kale paused, letting his words sink in. "You may see us as weak," he said softly, almost to himself. "But Earth taught us that the impossible is possible, that even the smallest, most fragile being can endure and triumph. That is why I am here, and why humans will not only survive among the stars, they will shape them." The chamber was silent, the air heavy with awe and disbelief. For the first time, the delegates looked at humans not as insignificant creatures, but as survivors, as a species that had been forged in fire and tested by chaos. Rila's mind raced. She had expected to see a fragile being, a human who would falter under pressure. Instead, she saw someone carrying the legacy of a planet that refused to die, a species that had endured and evolved through relentless adversity. And the more she thought, the more she realized her ridicule had been born of ignorance. You come from a world that survived everything," she said, her voice almost a whisper, as if speaking louder would shatter the fragile illusion she had held of human weakness. "And you're telling us that this small species has endured more than any of us could imagine?" Kale nodded. "Yes, and now the galaxy must understand that size, strength, or technology alone cannot measure survival. There is something far stronger in humans, the will to endure, to adapt, and to rise when the odds are against us." A low murmur of agreement spread through the chamber. Delegates who had once mocked him now looked on with a mixture of respect and unease. Humans were no longer a curiosity. They were a force born of resilience, a living testament to the power of survival against all odds. Rila's eyes met Kale's. She had expected to teach him humility, to demonstrate the superiority of her species. Instead, he had shown her something she could not ignore. Humans were remarkable. Not because of their appearance, not because of their technology, but because of their spirit. And in that quiet moment, as the twin suns outside cast long shadows across the chamber, Rila understood that her assumptions, her ridicule, and her pride had underestimated something far more powerful than she had ever imagined. Kale had revealed the truth. Earth was not weak, and humans were not small. They were survivors, and survivors could change everything. The alarm blared across the council chamber. cutting through the usual hum of technology like a sharp blade. A nearby star system, home to several inhabited planets, was collapsing. The council erupted and panicked species shouted instructions. Wings flapped, claws scratched control panels, but chaos ruled. Energy grids overloaded, shields flickered, and gravity fields fluctuated violently. Kale stood calmly, observing the turmoil. To any other species, the situation was hopeless. But he had learned, through every disaster on Earth, that hope was born in moments like this. One small human, he knew, could make a difference if he remained calm and focused. Rila was frantic, pacing beside the central console. "This is impossible," she shouted, frustration edging her voice. "The star will consume everything in hours. No species can stop it." She turned her gaze toward Kale, half in anger, half in disbelief. "And you, what can you possibly do? You're human." Kale looked at her without fear. His voice was steady, carrying authority even though his frame was small. "Humans survive the impossible," he said simply. "We learn, we adapt, and we find solutions no one else can see. The star is not beyond help." Rila's eyes narrowed. She had doubted humans, mocked them, and yet here was a human standing tall while her own species struggled. She couldn't ignore the truth. Kale's calm presence was the only thing preventing total panic. Kale moved to the main console, his small hands flying over controls with surprising precision. He analyzed the star's instability, patterns in the radiation, the energy flows. Every step required calculation, intuition, and courage, skills humans had honed on a planet that had never been forgiving. Around him, larger species hesitated, unsure how to assist without making things worse. Kale gave clear instructions, his voice firm but patient. "Redirect energy here. Stabilize the field there. Do not panic. Follow my guidance." Rila watched, conflicted. Every word he spoke, every precise adjustment, reminded her that humans were underestimated at her peril. Anger fought with respect in her chest. She wanted to dismiss him, to remind herself that a single species could not possibly succeed against universal forces, but she couldn't. Hours passed. Sparks flew, energy surges threatened to overload. Alarms screamed, but Kale moved steadily, adjusting, calculating, predicting. The aliens around him began to follow his instructions, slowly realizing that his methods, though unconventional, were working. Finally, the star stabilized, its violent pulses calming into a steady rhythm. The systems around it, once on the brink of collapse, hummed in perfect harmony. Silence fell over the council chamber. The delegates, who had moments ago panicked and scolded each other, now stared in awe. Rila stepped forward, unable to hide the respect in her eyes. You did it," she said, her voice quiet but heavy with emotion. "You've done what no one thought possible." Kale allowed himself a small, tired smile. "It wasn't me alone," he said. "It's what humans have always done. We survive, we adapt, and when others panic, we find solutions. Our strength isn't in size or power. It's in resilience, creativity, and persistence." For the first time, Rila saw the human not as fragile, not as small, not as laughable, but as something extraordinary. A species capable of facing impossible odds and prevailing. She realized she had judged him by appearances, by assumptions, and now she understood that strength often comes from the spirit, not the body. Delegates whispered, awe-filled and amazed. Some bowed slightly in respect. Others nodded silently. Kale had proven more than capability. He had proven that humans could inspire courage in even the most experienced species. Rila's heart was heavy with humility. "I ridiculed your species," she admitted softly, almost to herself. "I underestimated what Earth has given you." Kale looked at her, his eyes kind but unwavering. "It's easy to underestimate what you don't understand," he said. "But that doesn't make it any less powerful." The twin suns outside cast long beams of light into the chamber, reflecting off polished metal and glowing panels. Kale, small but resolute, stood among the galaxy's greatest beings, unshaken. In that moment, the council realized something profound. Humans were not only survivors, they were beacons of hope. Examples of what determination and ingenuity could achieve against impossible odds. Rila nodded, silently acknowledging a truth she had once refused to see. The galaxy had been shaken, and in that shaking, she had learned that even the smallest, most underestimated species could alter the fate of worlds. And Kale, the human who had once been mocked, now stood as a symbol, proof that courage, intelligence, and resilience could change the universe. The aftermath of the star crisis left the council chamber unusually still. Aliens of every shape and size moved quietly, some nursing wounds of panic, others processing the impossible. Kale, small but composed, stood in the center, surveying the room. His chest rose and fell steadily, his calm a stark contrast to the tension that still lingered in the air. Captain Rila approached him. Her usual arrogance softened by something she had never expected: respect. The last few days had forced her to reconsider everything she believed about humans. She had ridiculed them, mocked their fragility, and assumed they would fail. Yet here was Kale, a living testament to resilience, proving with every action that her assumptions were wrong. "You've done more than survive," Rila said quietly, almost hesitating. "You've shown us what my species never expected. What none of us expected. Humans are remarkable." Kale looked at her calmly, a faint, tired smile crossing his lips. "We are small, yes," he said. "We are fragile in appearance, yes. But that is never the measure of strength. Our survival depends on persistence, on intelligence, on courage. And above all, on hope, even when hope seems impossible." Rila's eyes softened. For the first time, she saw the human not as a curiosity, not as a subject for ridicule, but as a symbol of something far greater, a spirit capable of overcoming the impossible. She remembered all the moments she had mocked him, all the laughter that had filled the chamber at his expense. And now, she felt a strange humility, almost guilt, but also awe. "The galaxy. It judges by appearances," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "And we are wrong too often. Perhaps your species can teach us something important." Kale nodded. "Not teach," he said softly. "Remind. The galaxy forgets sometimes that survival is not about size, power, or dominance. It's about heart, mind, and spirit. It's about refusing to give up when everything tells you to." The council murmured, delegates turning their heads, some nodding in agreement, others lost in thought. Even those who had scorned him before could no longer deny the truth. Humans had survived against all odds on a planet that should have destroyed them. And now, in the presence of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, they had proven that survival was more than a measure of strength. It was a measure of character. Rila watched Kale, feeling something she had never felt before: admiration mixed with humility. She had come here ready to ridicule, ready to assert dominance, ready to prove humans insignificant. And yet, she found herself learning from him, witnessing the quiet power of persistence, intelligence, and courage. "You've changed the way we see humans," she admitted finally, her voice steady but soft. "I thought your species was small, weak. A footnote in galactic history. I was wrong. You're extraordinary." Kale's gaze softened. "Earth has always been extraordinary," he said. "Our people endure because we have no choice. We face storms, disasters, enemies, and yet we adapt. We rise, and when others expect failure, we succeed. That is the lesson Earth offers the galaxy." Rila nodded slowly, her pride mingling with respect. She had underestimated humans at every turn, but now she could no longer deny it. They were remarkable. Small, fragile, underestimated, but unstoppable in ways the galaxy had not imagined. The chamber, once filled with ridicule and whispers of doubt, now echoed with a different tone, one of awe, understanding, and respect. Delegates looked at Kale, and through him, at humanity. As if seeing a light they had overlooked for centuries, Kale's gaze drifted to the twin suns outside, their light reflecting across the polished metal floor. "This is only the beginning," he said quietly. "The galaxy is vast and full of challenges. But humans will endure, and we will rise not because we are the strongest, but because we refuse to give up. That is our power." Rila stood beside him in silence, absorbing the truth of his words. She had ridiculed him once, assumed she understood the human species, and yet she had been proven wrong in the most profound way.